the fourth record, We're All in This Together. You know, this one, I'm not sure if it was your top selling record. It might have been, but it was the one that got me, Scott Goldfine, into Chocolate Milk because it came out when I was in high school and out here in Los Angeles, where I grew up. I'm in Charlotte now, but grew up in Los Angeles. And I mean, black radio there was all over this. I mean, Girl Calling was huge, and Grand Theft 2. So tell me about the making of that record and how it was received and that whole experience with that record for you.
Well, let me take it back just a little bit, back to the album with Chocolate Milk with the space lady on it. There was a song, not only Groove City, but there was a song called Say Won't Ya. And Say Won't Ya is one of the songs, again, that I had penned. And I always wanted to incorporate what we usually say. Because a lot of times in New Orleans, you know, there's always that saying. They say, you know, down south, they always say, let's go make groceries. And that's a slang, let's go make groceries. But during the time when French were French, I mean, that's how they spoke when they spoke English, because that's what it meant. But it had different meanings, connotations to it. So we usually say, yeah, did you go make groceries? And everybody start laughing. So when I had Say Won't Ya, that's kind of how we talked. We like, yeah, say won't ya? Hey, say won't ya now, man? Won't you? And then that got to be the saying. So that was a big hit, but it was a big hit on the East Coast. All right. And so since it was a big hit on the East, that Washington, D.C., all of them was playing at the time. There was the guy from DC, the funk band. I'm looking right at Buck.
Give me a hint.
I'm trying. The butt. Your butt. Your butt.
EU.
Your butt. You almost hit it.
It's EU.
What's it? EU? Yeah.
Yeah, EU. The butt. Yeah, from the Spike Lee
Doing the butt.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know if that was E. Okay, I thought it was somebody. But
that was from the 80s. Around the 80s, though.
Yeah, but doing the butt again, right? Was we had done Say Won't You before then, but that was the market. They liked that kind of a funk, and so for some reason, the West Coast, LA, didn't get into it. Again, like I'm going back to RCA as far as marketing and promoting is what it is. But the East Coast loved Say Won't You. And so Say Won't You did really well. It wasn't our highest one, but it did really well. And when it did really well, Say Won't You, it opened up a lot of eyes. So then Alan Toussaint said, okay, I'm going to come and sit with you for 6 months. I'm going to actually sit in the studio with you. And that's when he actually did that. So when he actually came in and did that, he came up with Girl Calling. But it was only because Say Won't You, I'm setting it up because that album before, I told Alan, I said, look, your studio is not getting it. I heard the Commodores, I played it for him. I put the Commodores on. It was actually Brick House at the time. And I put Brick House on. I said, do you hear them drums? Do you hear them? And he made a comment and he said, yeah, but a good song is a good song. It doesn't matter how it sounds or where it is. If it's a good song, it's going to be a hit no matter what. And I challenged him with that. And I said, not in this world, not here. And so I was looking for what Motown had with the Commodores, because their sound was crazy. Because we were on, so what Alan didn't get is that we were actually on tour with these people. We were with them. And we knew what they could play, and we knew what they were, and they didn't sound on the studio like they sound on the stage. They just didn't have that sound, and so, but they were good because they had hit records, so it still worked. And that's what I was trying to it couldn't get it. But anyway, we went and left anyway. So when we left anyway, we went to Total Experience Studio. The guy, Lonnie Simmons, at the time, he had that, and he wanted to take us over, like he did the Gap Band and all that. But we heard bad things about it. But he wanted to take us over. They had the Gap Band, they had I can go. So we met Jeffrey Osborne. Everybody came out of that tour. Michael, the Jacksons, all of them were there when we were coming there. So anyway, we did that album, and when we did that album and the Say Won't You did so well, it was then that he said, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna come in finally." And so that led to where Girl Calling was. So Girl Calling got big the opposite way. Instead of on the East Coast, it got big on the West Coast. The difference is, though, the West Coast got way more pull than the East Coast. The disc jockeys said, yeah, that's way, you know, like I said, you didn't know about Say Won't You, but if Say Won't You would have been on the West Coast, like Girl Calling, that would have been phenomenally big, because I wrote that song. The one that Girl Calling, Alan Toussaint wrote that song. Well, although we did all arrangements to it, but he wrote that song. So again, it went on the West Coast, and every celebrity knew that song. Everybody. LeVar Burton, at the time when Roots were out, we met LeVar Burton, and I couldn't believe how I was a fan of his, and he was like on his knees with me, and I was like, what's going on? I couldn't believe what was happening. I was kind of starstruck when that happened, because it was what it was. Peabo Bryson, all of those were out on concert. We were headlining over them, and on the West Coast. Everything, when we go to the big record signings, they had the
a beautiful thing about that one, Frank, is I mean, I believe you were sounding like Frank Richard on that one. You weren't sounding like somebody else.
Exactly, right.
So that was a beautiful thing.
Yeah. It was beautiful because here's the deal. At the time, Alan Toussaint was intimidated, as big artists are. Everybody has their own complexes that they deal with, and he knew I could sing, and he knew that deep down he knew he can't really sing, but he was a guy that was trying to coach me how to sing, and he couldn't pull it off himself. And so that was a pull between us, the big pull. The big pull between us was that I didn't touch the piano, because I wouldn't try to challenge him on the piano. So a lot of people at that time really didn't know I could play piano, because there were so many other people that could do that. But vocally, I knew I could go with anybody vocally. So when he would tell me what to sing and how to sing it, I was singing and I would sing it better. And then he would walk away. And so I had to deal with a lot of that kind of thing playing out in this. So he used to teach me how to sing the Girl Calling and how to sing it. And because we were going at it so much, I defied him more. So I tried to be more me than to try to be him. And so that's how it came off to be that. In fact, if that makes any sense. Yeah, that's how God works. It worked that out, because, again, that was a good thing that we defied, because I decided to be me and not be him. And he wanted me to sing it a certain way. He wanted me to do it, and I refused, because I had an ego about me, and that was the problem. You know, I was like, I'm better than you. So why you trying? And so that was as a young kid, that's how you. And I was young, and that's how it came off, So, but anyway, Girl Calling came out big, and I had to. There was a yodel in there that I also put in there, and I had to fight him on that, because he was like, no, I don't think you ought to do that, and that was the ego of him telling me what I should do. But when I did it he told me demonstrate it, and so when I demonstrated it for him, he was like, I went, Callin, and he was like, wow, do that again. And I did, Callin, and then he was like, oh, okay, all right, well, we'll see how that works. And so, and we put that on, and I had kids trying to sing that when we would go to concerts the whole time. I mean, it was one of those things that kind of helped pull it in. But he was the orchestrator of the sound that we had, where I was actually singing horn parts. So while they were playing their horns, I was singing the horn parts to it. So when Joe was playing da 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 da, I would say I wouldn't change it along with the horn part, and that was different the way we were doing it, and so that kind of set it different. I think that's what the West Coast really liked about the idea. All of it, I'm sure, but I was actually singing jazz licks against the funk.
I think also the West Coast was just always a little more attuned to the slower tempo funk. That's why, because gangster rap hit it here too.
Yeah.
More in the slow kind of laid back groove,
Right.
Rather, New York had the disco came out of there.
Yeah.
I mean,
You're so true, so right on that. We were different. It was, I think that was the thing. It was different, and had that slow funk about it. In fact, if I can remember correctly, after because everybody in LA was loving this song. I mean, they was making us live out there. So why don't y'all come live out here? And we went back to New Orleans, which we should have stayed. But that was the thing. I mean, everybody loved that song, and so I think what happened when we did that. We went to because we had finished Total Experience. We went to visit Total Experience, and the Gap Band was there, and they had a song, "Shake Your Booty," and it was dun 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 dun.
That was like their first hit, yeah.
And but it had that dun 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 dun, and I say, wait, y'all done stole our groove, like really?
Yeah,
y'all stole our
slower
groove.
funk also, yeah.
Right, and then later on was a faster version of that, a little faster version of that called "Ladies' Night" with the Kool in the Gang. And they had dun 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 with the piano going through the whole thing, because that's what we had, that piano going like a train through the whole record, just constantly doing that, and everybody kind of picked up on that and took it to another level. Every time I heard another record, that's what I heard. So we kind of opened that door.
I got a few other points I want to mention about this record too, though.
Yeah.
Maybe part of being of RCA and that whole thing you were saying where it wasn't a great fit. How could Grand Theft was not a single? How could that not have been a single? You know how much airplay that got on the West Coast, at least?
Yeah, I wasn't aware of Grand Theft airplay, but I was aware of when we played Grand Theft on the concert, when we did the Peebo Bryson concert. We were over Peebo Bryson, but when we did that, we played Grand Theft, and people went crazy over it. And, I knew we had something. Before then, I knew we had something, but that was just proof that we did. It's just that with the RCA, we had problems of that. And in all fairness of the world that we live in is today, the record companies, especially at that time, played a lot of musical chairs. Now, you'd have somebody who really believed in you and who loved you and who said, you know what? Hey, I got you. We're going to market this. We're going to go this. I came up with the doubloons and put the doubloons on the album and the whole bit. And he said, yeah, we're going with that. And then the next day, they weren't there. And I said, who are you, Elliot Horn? And he said, yeah, no, I'm not Elliot Horn. I'm John Days. So this is, I'm now your new marketing man. And I was like, well, where was El? Well, he's not with us anymore. And then the next week, he would be gone. So we had musical chairs going along, what we call in the company itself, RCA. So we had to make friends with people all over again, and they had to sell us. We had to sell them on us as we went. It wasn't like the Players and Earth, Wind and Fire. Like I remember, they had a big team machine. It wasn't until these people died. I mean,
It's funny because, I look at a group like Chocolate Milk and I say, wow, the whole catalog was on RCA. That's great continuity. They were fortunate to be able to have one label as home and not have to move all around.
That's true.
It's been a good thing, but it seems like it wasn't.
Yeah, that was the downfall of it all. Like I said, it was just a lot of, we came in at a time where people were getting fired from that company. Left and right, or fired or leaving or whatever, but it was never stable. And because and that could have been largely because they didn't know what to do with a funk group. It could have been largely that some other things, people were doing something with the money and the kickbacks and the da-da-da-das, and we can go on and on. It could be a lot of all of those things, but the fact remained is that we didn't have anybody that was solid in our corner to really push those records and run it to the markets and the radio stations that they needed to run them to. And so, yeah, they got lost in the mix. So, like you said, Grand Theft was a big record when we played it. Everybody loved it. Put your hands up.
The biggest crime to Grand Theft was it wasn't a single.
Right, right. And like I said, that was the people that was dropping the balls. They were choosing the singles, and we didn't have anybody to push us when we said we needed to have that, because we thought Grand Theft was a big record when we actually recorded it. As soon as we recorded it, we thought it was going to be big.
Of course, the flip side of that is it probably helped you sell more albums. So,
yeah, it did. It did help us sell more. I'm not unhappy with the situation. I just know what it was during that time, and you just wonder what it could have been.
Right. But
that Girl Calling was like huge. I mean, every movie store knew that record, and I was like, I didn't envision that. I didn't. So when I got there, I didn't realize. I know we'd have fans, but I didn't know that the celebrities were fans like that. And so that was quite humbling for me when I saw people, Denzel Washington and people like that, say, wow, yeah, Girl Calling, that kind of thing. And like, wow, what y'all need, and that kind of thing. And so it was very humbling.
Yeah, well, I loved it. And I have a couple more comments or questions about this record, Frank.
Yeah.
One is the title track had sort of to me like a Temptations kind of vibe. Was that something?
I think I've always felt that, but I think Alan Toussaint, coming from the era where he came from, because he was still older than us, and so right around that beginning of Motown, he really was into the Marvin Gaye kind of thing. So if you hear that, ooh, baby, when you listen to that, ooh, anything falsetto like that, it reminds me of Marvin Gaye. And I'm telling you that when I was like 12, 13, 14 years old, listening to How Sweet It Is to Be Loved by You, Ain't It Peculiar, by Marvin Gaye, I was listening to that sound. So when he was giving me, why don't you do a ooh here, da 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 da, that was the things that were coming through my head, through my record. And since I could recall them almost like a library in my mind, I could recall them and pull them up. He was fascinated and loved it because he remembered it also. So
you did have that
did
connection.
not. Yeah. So he didn't. We wasn't at odds at that. I came up with the, ooh, baby. And so he just kept on, he said, do this one. Ooh, sugar, sugar. So the sugar came from the Marvin Gaye kind of how Marvin would say sugar. I know that came from it. He don't have to tell me that. I know that came from that because I remember those records. And so, and I don't think that was a coincidence. But again, yeah, that was the feel. We had a little bit of a lot of other people, especially like you say on that bridge. That bridge reminded me of Marvin Gaye. It kind of reminded me. And we did a lot of the falsetto thing. I call to you. All of that was part of the Motown kind of thing,
right.
Eddie Kendricks.
Over the Rainbow is not the
Eddie
Wizard of Oz song, but it's a nice slow song on there.
Yeah, that's Eddie Kendricks too. I mean, we had I kind of did both sides of it. I kind of thought about the Temptations, Dennis Edwards, how he would probably do it in a lead vocalist voice of a group, and then how Eddie Kendricks would sing it, but my own twist on each one of them. So I did Over the Rainbow, Over the Rainbow, something I think that a falsetto guy of a group would sing. And I always thought about like Eddie Kendricks doing that kind of thing. So that's kind of where that and maybe a little Earth, Wind and Fire attitude of Philip Bailey, but more that first strong voice was kind of like a Dennis Edwards kind of a preaching kind of singing part on that, know. Right. But yeah, that was the intent of writing that particular song, Over the Rainbow,
This record, and maybe it's because of Alan Toussaint's involvement, but it seemed like in the title and some of the other tracks, it was a little more political, maybe in its lyrical content than some of the other records. Where did you and Chocolate Milk fall in terms of, you know, the lyrical content and wanting to be political or wanting to be more about love or what more about sex or whatever?
Mm-hmm. Oh, what album you said again? What album you thought that was?
We're All in This Together. You know, the covers holding the earth, and
when we finally convinced Alan to come in the studio with us, we had a concept of where do we go? What you want to make this album about? Da 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 da. We had a conference and meeting, and the whole bit, and we just said, well, Alan, really and truly, we all came up to the conclusion, man, this world is just going too fast. I mean, it's a fast world, you know? And so so Alan said, yeah, well, maybe we ought to write something about a fast world, you know, how fast the world is, you know? And then we kept talking and talking. Somebody came up with it. I don't remember, but somebody came up with it and said, well, why don't we just come up with slowing the world down? Why don't we just slow the world down? And they said, wow, that's a great, let's go with that concept, slow the world down. And so we had to write now a song that says slow the world down, because we went with the market. We had a big seating, we sat with RCA, we sat with everybody, came with the concept, slow the world down, and everybody said, oh, that's a great idea, da 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 da. So this is what we're gonna do with the world, and we're gonna put the hands on the world like we're trying to slow the world down, and da 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 da, and the whole bit. And so they looked at the forms and all of that, and we did, I will kid you not, we did 633 cuts of Slow the World Down. I was on the studio on the ground trying to, you know, and it just was not working. We did 633 takes of that. Wow. And it just wasn't working. And so we finally say, you know, it's just not as good as we would like it to be. It's just not. And so Alan wrote another song. And he wrote another song, and the song was called We're All in This Together. And at the time, we didn't know anything. We just went at the song. So we went at the song, We're All in This Together, and it started to gel. And it had a little bit of second line in it in the end, and the da-da-da-da, and it had a little New Orleans sound to it. And then we kind of liked it. And then we say, wow, you know what? This could be the title of the album, We're All in This Together. And then everybody said, RCA said, well, we already did the album cover to Slow the World Down. Y'all told us slow the world down, and now you're doing We're All in This Together. And then somebody came up with the concept and said, well, it still could be that. Like, the hands could not mean slow the world down. The hands could mean we're all in this together. And so that's kind of how the concept went. The only thing they had to do was take the skid marks off of it, because the world was turning, and they had the hands on it, and they had sparks flying from the hands, and the whole thing, like slowing the world down. But since we had We're All in This Together, they took the sparks out of that and tried to, you know, make it look like we're all in this together. So we kept the hands on it, and that's how it came about.
It looks like a Giant's about to shoot a free throw shot with it.
Yeah, it sure does. It sure does. Holy it. Except nowadays they do it with one hand. But
yeah.
But that's so true.
That's a really interesting backstory. That's the kind of great stories that we really appreciate on Truth and Rhythm. So I also want to ask you, Frank, you know, can you talk a little bit about the creative process of Chocolate Milk as an entity, aside from, you know, Alan Toussaint? How did you guys, in general, put together your songs and create, and how much did you guys rehearse and do that kind of stuff?
Well, we did it in different ways. When we first started recording, or when we first started writing, actually, we were, like I said again, we were in a Club Horse, and the other one was Club, we call it Club 77. Every time we had a rehearsal, and we'd have a day rehearsal before we actually started performing that night. At the rehearsal, we perform songs like Herbie Hancock and da-da-da-da and da-da-da-da and da-da-da-da. And then we do them, and after we perform them, because we were so good at what we did, we had gotten so tight that we'd do a Herbie Hancock, but then we put a twist on it. After we get everybody on the dance floor, we put a twist on it and we start making up as we go. And we would watch the crowd, how they would scream and holler and get more involved every time we come up with something. So we would take that to the rehearsals and we would make that what we would make that. And that's kind of how that would go about. So the only thing that we would have to add would be a lot of lyric writing. So we'd have to come up with a concept, a lot of lyric writing, but a lot of the songs were already pretty much in place based off of the songs that we were using, playing. And so Ohio Player song, like I said, Herbie Hancock or Erwin Fire, anybody what we were playing, we never did them exactly like the record. We do it exactly like the record to get them on the floor. And once we got them on the floor, then we went to another space. We just start funking in another way. And people started liking it.
What about the arrangements? Did you tinker around with those much in the studio?
We did do some things in the studio. Most of it, though, was always done at the rehearsals. We just do them at the rehearsals. Well, when we got to the actual studio to record it, sometimes we'd try it, and sometimes it worked, and sometimes it didn't work in the studio. Or sometimes we added more, and we did more, and we thought of ideas, and we put them in. But for the most part, we did them during that time. We did them simply from the club. It just was coming from God, as we were saying. It just was coming. It just came to us. In rehearsals, everybody could come and we would be on board and we catch it. Like action speaks louder than words. It was a saying during that time, and say action speaks louder than words, and what the president was doing, and this wasn't doing that, and we just wrote down exactly what people were actually saying and how they were feeling, and we just put it to that music. And that was kind of a takeoff to the slow funk that we were talking about in Girl Calling. It was slow. It was a slow kind of funk. And in fact, we were criticizing our own selves because we say our music is too laid back. Everybody else is playing we should be up there with everybody else, and we playing too slow. The drummer is too. You too laid back, drummer. We need to get another drummer, and da 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 da. We was going through the whole ritual, and not realizing that was our signature, and for a long time that was the deal. Even though we were telling us to pick up the tempo, Dwight would still go back into his feel good play, and that's kind of what that was.
I don't know how you'll feel about this, but to be honest, you talked about messing with the tempo, and the Milky Way record, which you mentioned a couple times before, and had Say Won't Ya and also Groove City, which was a big local hit. Overall, though, that record definitely showed more disco influence in the group, and I think the record itself was arguably the lightest on funk of all the Chocolate Milk records. So what's your take on that?
Oh, I don't know. Tell me again, because I'm just getting this. So you're saying which songs?
No, I'm saying the Milky Way album.
The Milky Way album. Okay, got it.
Was disco influenced and had the least amount of funk on it.
Right. I'm going to take you back again, just from the time we had the meeting with Alan Toussaint. Because when we had the meeting with Alan Toussaint, we were talking about doing the Milky Way album and a whole bit. And he wanted us to he heard Groove City, he loved it, but he wanted it to do it in New Orleans. And he said, since it's a New Orleans song, you should be doing it here with me and da-da-da-da. And I saying, but I don't like the sound here. The engineers, they da-da-da-da. And he took offense to it. All right. And so he took offense to it, and then but he consented to it. He said, well, if that's what y'all want to do, I feel like I'm a general who has lost his army. That's what he told us. And he said, you know what? If that's what y'all want to do, y'all go ahead and do it. So we made arrangements. We took the plane, got the hotel, we got there, and no Alan Toussaint. Next day, no Alan Toussaint. So we say, you know what, guys, we're gonna have to produce this album ourselves. We're gonna have to do this ourselves. We're gonna have to show them. So we went to the studio, and I met Bob Hughes, and Bob Hughes was a great engineer there at Total Experience. He told me about the room that they had in the back, that had vocal room that actually had that echo, that certain kind of presence that we didn't know anything about. And so it was enormous. So we was just like learning the studio all over again in the Total Experience, and we were learning as we go, and we had the people there as we go. So that kind of led to the light funk, because first of all, we weren't in our home. We were in LA, and they knew about funk, but they didn't know it how we did it. So we were learning each other. And because we were learning from each other, we got what we got. They knew about girl calling. And all, in fact, they wanted to do another girl calling record type. That's what they wanted to do. And I just didn't feel at the time, I was just so disappointed in Alan Toussaint. I didn't want to have anything to do with him. And so I didn't even want to write a song near to what he had before. So all the records songs that we came up with were songs that were different from that in my mind. But at the same time, it was relative to LTD and Gap. Everybody that came through the Total Experience, it was kind of that. So when you listen to You Are the One, You Are the One, that was girl calling. But then we had another one that said on there, You're the one, any way you want, you're the one. And that You're the One record, you smile a smile that makes me smile. But the attitude I sang in that came from Jeffrey Osborne kind of take. And so because they were familiar with that, that's what I went with, because we were just learning each other. And because we were learning each other, that's kind of how that came about. And during that time, we just wanted to make a real good ballad. There was another ballad called Hurry Down Sunset, which never really took off or did anything. But Hurry Down Sunset was a great song to me. And I really liked that song. So I didn't want to replace it with a funk song. There was a funk song we had, and actually we wound up putting it on the other album when we got to Alan Jones. But there was a funk song that we actually did there, and that was Shake Your Body. Shake Your Body, baby. I was gonna do Shake Your Body, and but I liked that song, so we knocked that one out and put Hurry Down Sunset on it, and it backfired. A lot of people didn't get into that one as much as I had hoped. But that's kind of what happened. What happened in LA is that we had so much turmoil going on that we kind of strayed away from what girl calling was. And I didn't go back to that until the album when we went to Studio City in LA. And when we went to Studio City in LA, we got with George Tobin, because again, like I told you, RCA kept having these musical chairs going on. And we had now a Caucasian group of people who were trying to do funk in the A&R because they didn't have anybody there. So they said, you know what you guys need? Y'all need a crossover hit. You guys need to go see George Tobin. He's the guy that did Sad Eyes. Have you heard of Sad Eyes? And at the time I said, yeah, I heard it, but so now trust me, that's where y'all should go, because he did for Smokey Robinson, and George Tobin did this and did that and and so we went to Studio City to George Tobin, where we met Mike Pizzarilla on guitar, and these guys had a great sound there over there too. They had a great sound, but they wanted to put that funk, but they came in with the LA kind of funk again, and that's again what they heard. They heard a lot of like we were talking about before, Larry Graham, and all of that. So hypnotism came about. And when hypnotism came, they wrote hypnotism, Pizzarilla, and George Tobin not so much, but his little team, they wrote hypnotism, and they had this bass on it, and the bass guy wasn't our guy. They got somebody from LA, and I forgot his name. But
that track actually kind of reminds me of Ladies Night by Cool and the Gang.
That's the right, and that's where the hypnotism, you got it. It came across, and that's the kind of feel. Great record. We sounded really good with it, but that's kind of where we were going. And then at the time, like I said, I had got over that animosity with Alan Toussaint, and so I came up with another song similar to that, and that was called "Hey Lover," and "Hey Lover" was with the horns, a play on the horns and vocals. You know, give me the love, they lover. There be your love, da 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 da, and I was actually singing that with that. So that was kind of like a takeoff from the girl calling in the funk. So
yeah, that was
trying to bring that.
That one had the funk, but it also had a radio ready kind of sound to it, to me.
Right, and I'm gonna tell you, when we talk about RCA Records again, that's what I'm saying, that the guys that did that put the team together to get us with George Tobin. That's what they were looking for, a radio type sound to get going. That's why we came up with "I'm Your Radio." I mean, there was a lot of songs that we came up with, which were great songs. I really liked them. "I'm Your Radio, turn me on," and it had a lot of the way they did it, turning the stations on it, like you're changing your station and you're going to "I'm Your Radio." So they had great ideas. I thought it would be great for airplay of it. It's just that I think the signs of the times are what it is. You know, there's a lot of, I mean, we can go on and on about racism and what that is, but sometimes a lot of, if they see who you are and they try to relate you to pop radio or whatever, they're like, "Oh, I don't really, I'm not feeling that." And so we don't get that play. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Again, like I said, that could have been all of RCA's promotion. It could have been it could have been something different, but it is what it is. That album was a great album. We did really well with it, as far as the work that was put into it. George Tobin did. He's a very egotistical man. He took a lot of the money, and he is what he is. But at the same time, we learned a lot, and we got a lot from it. And I don't regret not going to Studio City. We did have a great sound, especially for my voice. I love my voice there. And then so they were able to experiment. We did a song that would be a cut between gosh, that's nostalgia sing. I'm trying to remember his name. Chances are
Johnny Mathis.
Johnny, a cut between Johnny Mathis and maybe Nat King Cole, "Forever and a Day." And so I did a song called "Forever and a Day," which gave another kind of highlight to me for that. But again, it didn't get a lot of play. So
it also brings to mind "Always and Forever," Heatwave.
That's right. "Always and Forever." Right. Yeah. Except it didn't come over big like that. But that was the intent. And so we had that. But we also wanted to do experimental things during that time. So we also wanted to do some hard rock stuff. So since we were on that pop category, and we used to do it as when we were young, when we were traveling all over the place, and when we were young, we were playing, like I said, we were playing the America song, and Chicago was out there. So we were doing those kinds of songs. We were doing that. So this was not new. So I wrote a song called "Would It Be All Right to Call?" And it sounded like one of those rock songs. And so we did that. And then we had "Would It Be All Right to Call?" And then we went back to the funk. We did a song called "Showdown." And Showdown had like a little James Brown kind of funk to it. But that was we were all over the place because we were trying to find that identity where we were fighting with RCA. They wanted us to sound like a radio-ready kind of band with a pop sound.
Yeah, I got to mention, Frank, that this was 1980, and I mean, most of the bands, most of the R&B black bands were going through similar things wherever they were at that time.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Boogie Wonderland, disco. I mean, it was like that. Everybody was going through it. It's just that, like I said again, Earth, Wind and Fire had that machine behind them that kind of helped put that through that. But they were going through that same thing. I remember when they were saying like, "Ooh, Boogie Wonderland," you know, like what? That's not us. Like, you know. And they were like, you know, Boogie Wonderland is like a disco, and the world is in a disco, and now we got to do the Boogie Wonderland, and it wound up being big for them. But you never know how things are gonna go. But that was the thing. They wouldn't have done Boogie Wonderland had not the world was going in that direction, and everybody was trying to capitalize on that. You're right.
I want to mention a couple things about two songs we've talked about. Groove City. I felt some Earth, Wind and Fire vibe in that. I don't know if you agree with that, but
I agree with it because only because I agree with it because I get the same feedback from everybody else. You know, because a lot of people know us, but a lot of people don't. And someone they said, "Well, what's what song you did?" I said, "It's a song called Groove City." And then they say, "Groove City." You sure that's Chocolate Milk, Groove City? I thought that was an Earth, Wind and Fire song. I said, no, it's a Chocolate Milk song. But
they're from Chicago.
Yeah, there you go.
Windy City is their song.
Yeah, so that was a lot of people giving me that feedback, you know that. But I actually wrote that song. To be honest, when I wrote that song, I actually wrote that song after I saw Heat Wave perform. Heat Wave performed in Baton Rouge, and I went to that concert. And I actually went for Always and Forever because I wanted to see how the lead singer
Johnny Wilder
worked the crowd. Johnny Wilder. I wanted to see how he worked the crowd at the time for Always and Forever. And they wound up playing their hit song, Groove. They came out with Groove Line.
Yeah.
And on the groove line, and I was fascinated with the groove line, and I was fascinated how the crowd was singing groove with the groove line. And so when I went back home, I said I want to write a song with groove in it, but I wanted to make sure that it made sense in the whole bit. And when I got back home, actually when we got back into the clubs, a lot of people were saying groovy and groove and we're in the groove, and it was groove, and it just meant that, you know, you're in the right place. It meant you're in the right spot, and that's where Groove City came about.
Was a big hit.
One Nation Under Groove. That was the time, and so when I heard that, that's what I came up with Groove City. So when I wrote that, but I originally got it from Heat Wave.
Interesting.
But Templeton, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The other track we've been talking a lot about, Frank, the Say Won't You. That one, to me, I hear a little bit of like Blackbird's Rock Creek Park kind of thing in there. I don't know.
Wow, you know, now that's interesting because we did that too, and I didn't remember that. But we also did Donald Byrd and the Blackbirds. We did a tour with them, and
Osmosis.
I'm not sure. Yeah, but I used to like that, doing it in the park, doing it after dark. Oh yeah, but we did that, and so now that you mention that definitely could have been influenced because we were influenced by everybody we went out with.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody we went out with, we were influenced by them all.
All the bands then were doing that, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The Daz Band, all of them. You know, we were doing that. Whip It. During that time, that was the time. And then, you know, like I said, we haven't gotten to yet the later years of Grandmaster Flash. We had to fight with the rappers because we had
sampling.
At the time I wasn't into that, and so but that was the end thing, and so we had to figure it out. And so we were on tour with them, and we were putting everything we could on stage, and people were not feeling us. They were feeling those rappers. They were feeling Grandmaster Flash the whole time. And that was the only time that I could remember that we didn't feel like we were killing it on stage like we used to kill it. We were like not there.